So to our YouTube watchers,
Didn't say welcome to Bonehead. How do they know what they're watching?
do we need to? So to our YouTube watchers, James has gone full on straight. Oh man, hold on a
Smell
second.
blind.
No, James has gone full on train spotting on us.
That's not true. I'm broadcasting now from Australia. This is how those people live. Hi, Glenn.
Yeah, that's a good question. You're upside down. I found a poll out in my yard and posted about it. And Glenn said if I followed it long enough, he would be on the other end.
Would he be sitting on it? Did you please say you made a comment of would you be sitting on it?
He got us Mick Garris, or at least helped.
I think he would
thought
laugh
he
at
was
that.
making a flagpole sitter reference. See,
I was actually thinking about flagpole sitter as well.
I'm not sick, but I'm not well.
You're not in good shape. You didn't used to look like this, to quote the Ghostbusters.
Well,
By the
now
way,
he's an
my dad
amputee.
was here today, and he heard clearly, although he never picked up on what Quentin was saying, but it was mother puss bucket.
Do you go, good son, good son?
No, he didn't understand what he was saying. Mother puss bucket, buttons and bows, which I understand, and home and garden. I didn't teach that to him.
Where does home and garden come from? What sick crap are you letting that child watch when they talk about home and garden?
School.
Before we get on to our topic, I got to ask you guys a question. I do not know anything about fashion, obviously.
What? I would have known that had you not told me.
But I
Hey,
thought
is James upside down?
No.
Okay.
I'm in the upside down. I'm going to turn on your Christmas lights whether you want them on or not.
Oh, it took me a second.
Anyway, so I'm not keen on fashion, but I think I saw what may be the most insecure man in the history of ever.
Listen, Chad, I want people to love me.
And here's why. Not only was he wearing suspenders,
Yeah.
but he had a belt on as well.
Yeah, I see people do that.
Isn't that kind of defeat the purpose of the suspenders?
They're usually in maintenance.
What?
The people I've known who I've seen do that quite a bit are in maintenance.
No, this was in maintenance.
Chad, in all fairness, the other thing that you need to think about is what sort of support did he need? Did he also have it with a nice brassiere?
That's true.
I didn't think about that.
True.
We should support others as they need to be supported.
Listen, Judgy McJudgerson.
I just felt like
in your house of judging.
I just honestly looked at the son of a
Maybe
bitch.
he got pantsed, and pantsed is a term for where they pull their pants down. Maybe he got pantsed, had his wiener came out. This happened in grade school. A bunch of girls or a bunch of boys laughed at him, and he has been petrified ever since.
Maybe
this is the Wade the Duck of the human beings.
I just wanted to look down because he seemed like the type of person who would also duck his pants into his socks too. But no, that didn't happen
Could be
either.
afraid of those pants coming off and letting everybody see his tackle.
Maybe, but that man needs to live a little. Pick one or the other.
Hey, I agree. I'm going out and showing the twig and berries to anybody who'll look.
And also, people, suspenders, it's over. Quit, give up on it.
Now, in all fairness, you're not being culturally sensitive. If you're wearing lederhosen, it is appropriate to wear suspenders.
But you got to be blowing out of one of the big ass horns, otherwise
I was going to say, yes, James.
And
let's talk about cultural
fuck you.
Yeah, cultural insensitivity. Yeah, the Germans.
They're an understanding.
Maybe if people are treated with more respect, they wouldn't act that way. I've seen Rocky IV like.
Oh my God! Let's get on to the topic before we.
Yeah. So this topic is on by the seat of our pants. It's one we wanted to do for a while,
and it's one of our hardest.
Yeah, I am not happy with my list, and
I'm pretty happy with mine. But I went with ones where I was like, everything that they did, I can at least find something I like about it. So,
I'm not happy with my list because there's just too many.
Yeah, that's exactly why
I didn't have that problem because people constantly disappoint me.
Well, even the people whom I'm going to talk about, even when they disappoint me, it's an interesting disappointment.
Exactly. And that's, well, I only have one case of that happening with my directors. But yeah, the there's always, you can always look at his bad movies and find something enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, like you said, this list was hard for me because I left off. Well, one thing, I had it down to at least 6 or 7, but then I had to dismiss a few of those because I figured you guys would bring them up. So I left them off my list.
So we're doing our favorite directors, and these aren't the best directors. And honestly, I have a hard time saying these are my 3 favorite directors because I have a bunch of directors.
As do I.
And the point, and this is going to be a little bit of, anyone knows me, that was my dream. That was my dream when I was from a little boy on, and I failed at it at 42 years old. We made some short films, but I've clearly not made a living as a filmmaker, as a director, and that's what I wanted to do. So a lot of these people, the 3 I'm going to talk about, is probably more accurate to say I looked up to them the most.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to call it favorite, that's fine. But these people influenced me greatly. Even if I didn't end up making those movies, these people influenced my life.
Yeah, no, and I was about to say my list is literally just people that I love to quote movies, and one of them is literally because I was just thinking of movies that I quote or get quoted in pop culture all the time, and the director that did so many of them, I was like, he deserves credit for filming those scenes in such a way that they did become so quotable. So yeah, I mean, my picks are all over the place, a lot of old stuff, but there you go.
I've got a black cat under my legs who keeps purring loudly. If any of you hear it on the
That's okay. We just thought you were farting.
Well, that's a real weird fart.
Have you heard your farts?
They don't sound relaxing and hypnotic and at the same decibel. They'll go low. They're like a mountain peak.
James, do you agree with this at all about Joe's farts?
I mean, I don't tend to catalog them, to be honest, but
what else you got going on?
I do cocaine.
I've heard.
It's really easy to do cocaine here in Australia because you don't have to snort it up. You just hold it up and it drips right in.
Upside down. For you all who are not watching us on the YouTube, James is still upside down. And it's still just as funny as it was the first time he did it.
By the way, we've all seen James with that 1960s reel-to-reel tape recorder with the microphone right near your sphincter going, hee.
But that's James making that noise.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Anyway, so who wants to get us started, gentlemen?
Joe, I'll let you go first, sir.
All right. So to narrow this down was the biggest pain in the ass. And at the end of the day, it's very cliche for anyone who knows me very well. But these are 3 people that, in fact,
it's kind of like going pick your 5 favorite films, which I don't think any of us can really do.
Because it depends on my mood, man. And then I go back a few years later and it's a little different. One of these people, I go back and watch their movies and I'm like, oh, it's different as a 42-year-old man than it was a 13-year-old boy. You know, It's just different. Has the same effect. So I'm having a hard time going, I'll just pick one. So I'm going to go with probably the most prominent, and this one's very cliche for any filmmaker out there, but I have had and I still have an obsession somewhat with Orson Welles. And part of it is directing and part of it is the man himself. So other than the fact that I could sit here and tell you that he directed Citizen Kane, The Lady from Shanghai, Touch of Evil, Chimes at Midnight, F for Fake. By the way, F for Fake is the one that no one remembers and that they should. And James, I know you've seen it. I can't remember if Chad's seen it or not.
I've seen it several times.
It's his later day masterpiece, as far as I'm concerned, that nobody ever talks about. It
is a very unique film.
But he reimagined how you tell a movie.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it takes about 15 to 20 minutes of watching it to kind of catch on and to get how the story is unfolding. And then to realize that an hour into it, you've been duped from that point on.
Yeah, because you could almost say
he was going to do it to you at the beginning of the movie.
And you could almost say like the first part of that movie is kind of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of looking like you're watching like an episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
That's absolutely what it is. And it's talking about fakers and some famous fakers. And one of the two people that they talk about, one in particular, there was an actual Richard Gere movie made about this famous faker as well. And I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah, it's called Officer and a Gentleman.
No, those are just orgasms. He faked all his orgasms. I almost say
Because he had that
McGillis,
gerbil.
but Kelly McGillis is in Top Gun, isn't she?
Yes.
Is that Laura? Who is that? Who's
Deborah Winger.
Deborah Winger. Thank you. I couldn't remember.
You're welcome.
I only know her from Legal Eagles.
And the gerbil's name was Hammy.
Look up Legal Eagles, directed Ivan Reitman, the one that no one ever remembers that was directed by Ivan Reitman. It's a comedy with Robert Redford, and those work. Anyway, moving right along. Orson started out born to an older gentleman who was basically a playboy and a younger mother who was a feminist. That both.
All right. I hope our YouTube viewers are enjoying the hell out of this right now.
What's going on?
Look
I
at
miss-
James. James is
The
reading.
Muppets character encyclopedia is. Oh, that's funny, James. I'm sitting here pontificating, and you are sitting there making. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Visual jokes on a podcast.
You all know where Orson was born. I find this fascinating.
Toledo.
Kenosha, Wisconsin. Everybody thinks he was born and raised in Europe, but he was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin. His dad was basically a playboy who was kind of a part-time inventor who had inherited a lot of his money. Orson was then raised throughout Europe. His mom and dad both died. He tried to stay out of school. He actually went to Ireland and would try to become a painter, and he never was all that great of a painter. And then he kind of fell into acting later on. He became famous on Broadway. He was also made a fortune. And for some people who probably don't understand this, television hadn't been invented, really. And he was on radio, and radio was the thing. And he was the voice of what, gentlemen?
Oh, Transformers. The trailer to Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Chad, who was he the famous voice of? Do you know?
You're throwing me for a loop. here.
Shadow.
The Shadow.
Oh,
Yeah.
the
Shadow.
shadow.
Yeah.
Yes,
I was just
Francis
being asinine.
the
over
Shadow.
there, but yes.
He made here's a quick story. So Orson,
Which, by the way, you can find episodes of his The Shadow on podcast, Podbean, whatever, any pod place you would listen to podcasts. You can find old episodes of The Shadow of Orson Welles.
and you can also find a lot of episodes of what he created, which was called the Mercury Theater, which was on radio and then was also did plays. He made a fortune during the Depression when other people weren't necessarily making a fortune. He was such a busy radio actor that he found out that trying to get to one place or the other took so much time in New York that he could hire an ambulance, and there was nothing illegal about it. And the ambulance would just turn on the siren and take him from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And we're talking about a boy who was 22, 23, making a fortune on radio and on the stage. Now, I could talk about his stage. Oh my God, there's a great movie if you're interested about the Works program with actors. What was the name of that again? Does anybody remember off the top of their head?
You're talking about the Works Progress, the WPA,
WPA.
and
Cincinnati.
no, that's WKRP.
No, but there's a great movie about it, and it's a true story. The movie's not as accurate, but it's about a Cradle Will Rock, about socialism, and the movie's called Cradle Will Rock. And if you ever get a chance to watch it, it's a fascinating film. Anyway, so he became really famous, huh?
I was going to say there's also if you're interested in fictional accounts of it, there's a story, a novel called Witches on the Road, which is actually about the photographers coming to Appalachia. And then it also takes a supernatural turn. But that being said, Witches on the Road tonight, there you go.
So he was very famous doing the Mercury Theater, but where he became great fame, where he became slightly infamous, was the famous War of the Worlds, where people actually thought that they were attacking, because he did it as he did the first fake broadcast of it as being a news program, and it was an interesting take on it, something different. This led to Hollywood coming, and then kept offering money till he finally had to go. Basically, RKO gave him the studio, and he got the contract that a lot of directors hated him for many, many years, because he got Final Cut, which was unflippin' heard of at that time, and made Citizen Kane. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole story. I could spend the whole next 3 episodes about this, but
Especially because you want to do a whole episode on Orson Welles, but
I'd love to do a whole episode.
It's on the list.
I'd love to do a whole episode.
He's a fascinating
He
cat.
fell out of popularity and ended up doing magic, working as an actor, living his life here and there. But
Advertising peas.
it's unfortunate that we only remember him for Citizen Kane because, yes, he probably made one of the most important American films ever made, but he went on to do other things. He didn't flip and die then. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that I think he gets wrapped up in Kane and that he was a washed up success at 26, which you can say there's some validity to that, but there's also so much great work that came after. So I, I know everybody else wants to talk. I'll kill it there with Citizen Kane.
Well, real quick,
Orson Welles.
I will say Orson Welles also deserves credit for another reason. He's the one that gave Kermit the Frog that standard rich and famous contract.
Yeah, and I think people know him more. It doesn't matter. Check out Orson Welles. Hopefully, we'll eventually get to do a whole episode on him. I won't talk about him as much now. Fascinating character. Do I think can I say one thing?
I don't
You
care.
can say
Out of
whatever
the
you want,
three
yeah.
people, I've picked, I would love to interview him, but I doubt that I would have actually liked him as a person, even though
Oh,
I
yeah,
find him
no.
fascinating. Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Your dream was always
Like
to be a
Dick Cavett,
director.
I'd love to talk to Dick Cavett more. I'm on his second book, but I think he's a D-bag, and I don't know that I'd like him.
And that's it. Your dream is to be a director, but most of the stories I know about directors, if they did a lot of directing, there's very few that have constantly great things said about them. Very, very few.
And we've talked about John Ford quite a bit on here. So who's next?
Sam Fuller.
Sam Fuller. I mean, his book, The Fourth Phase, is so fantastic. Instead of fucking saying action on those westerns, he would fire a pistol. Now, Clint Eastwood doesn't say action, and the reason being is he worked on just to tell you how crazy bad shit this is because he said he worked on so many westerns that the pistol would scare the fucking horses. So he's like, yeah, just go. Didn't want to scream. This
Right.
crazy son of a bitch fired a pistol. Sorry,
Ooh.
go ahead.
James, go ahead.
I'm going to start with one that sometimes gets credited for being.
Oh God, if he goes into Manos Hands of Fate, I'm gonna
No,
drive down the road
no.
and punch him in the throat.
Sometimes is remembered as an.
I've got new
overly-
tires. I can make it in this rain.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Not driving around on them baloney skins
Yes.
anymore.
Now Chad can come pick us up, take us about.
Um,
Have you seen my car?
Not lately. I haven't seen anybody's car lately.
a lot of people know this director for making a lot of schmaltzy films, but I
Oh,
actually
God,
will
he's
say,
doing
Gary
Gary
Marshall. I'm punching you.
Oh,
No.
it took me and Joe at the same time. Did Gary
no,
Marshall?
I'm going to go with somebody that, and I didn't realize how many movies he made that I loved until I was sitting down thinking about who I was going to talk about. I'm going to go with Frank Capra.
Really?
Frank Capra, most people go, "Oh, It's a Wonderful Life," right? Well, he
Blech.
also did.
No. Oh, by the way, It's a Wonderful Life is a good movie.
It is a good movie.
I didn't actually. I don't think I saw it as a grown man though.
But he also did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which feels way too long now, but it's a good film. You also get one of my all-time favorite movies with Cary Grant, Arsenic and Old Lace. You get It Happened One Night.
Yep.
You get Mr. D Goes to Town. You just get so many. of
I
these
prefer the
movies.
Adam Sandler's version.
Nobody prefers.
Adam Sandler.
Oh.
Prefer the Adam Sandler version.
By the way, to our listeners, that's a joke.
You get Lost Horizon.
Adam Sandler totally prefers the Adam Sandler version. Sorry.
We
You
all
get
know.
Lost
We all know.
Horizon as
We all
well.
know.
Lost
Little Nick-
Horizon with Shangri-La. Do you know the story behind that, James?
No, Ronald Coleman though is great in that. But what's the story behind it?
Real quick, I'm sorry. I know so much about some of these D-bags. So he worked for Roy Cohen, or not Roy Cohen. I can't remember his name. Cohen. Anyway, they previewed the movie and it was awful. And he thought he made it the greatest movie ever. And they were writing back and Cohen said, listen, and by the way, everyone hated Cohen. Orson Welles had some great stories about him. He bugged Orson's office, actually. So Orson would just walk by saying things to aggravate Cohen. So he said, don't worry. I gave you a contract. We're good. He went in, cut the first 2 reels. Now, if you don't know what a reel is, a movie is made up of like, is it 14 minutes, guys? I can't remember.
That sounds about right.
Is it about
because
14 to 16 minutes? Somebody, anybody? Anyway, so it'd be about 7 reels. The full length film feature is about 7 reels or something like that. He cut the first 2 reels, that's it, and then played in the movie is what we got today. And those 2 reels were lost, and he tried to make sure that they were destroyed, that no one would ever see them again. That's all he did. So if anything else, cut the first 20 minutes of your movie if it sucks.
Capra is just a fascinating cat anyway. I don't know if you know too much about him growing up, but he attended so he was an immigrant. He was from Sicily. Picture this, Sicily, 1897. Frank Capra's born. But Capra came to America. He has an entire story about how bad the voyage to America sucked. Like they were on a boat that had no ventilation, that it was just terrible, and that they could barely breathe and all of that stuff. But they get here, and he starts going to school at the Los Angeles Manual Arts High School. He made money selling newspapers in downtown LA. And when newspapers wouldn't sell, his brother would come over and start punching him to attract a crowd, because people would start to run over when they saw this guy walk up and start beating Frank Capra as a child. And that crowd then would feel bad for him and buy newspapers. He's a fascinating guy in his own right. Obviously, the war comes in. He did a lot of filming. Matter of fact, actually, recently rediscovered some of the films he made related to the war effort. He ended up, speaking of John Ford, he actually responded to a cattle call, quote unquote, for John Ford's film, The Outcast of Poker Flats. He was cast as a laborer in the Ford picture, and he introduced himself to the film star Harry Carey. 2 decades later, he would cast Carey.
Decades later, Harry Carey found himself caulking for the Cubs. Sorry.
If the man was made of spare ribs. Anyway.
Which is funny because Harry Carey Jr. was one of Ford's stable of actors. Sorry.
Well, he cast him in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Anyway, so if you've not, Frank Capra sometimes gets confused, or people think that he made these really schmaltzy films. You can't Take It With You is one of my favorite films that he did. If you've never seen, or actually before I saw the movie, I saw the play of You Can't Take It With You. It's basically about an eccentric family and get them having to, their daughter wants to get married, and they're more or less, they're not the Addams Family type eccentric, but they're just odd, and they do whatever they really want to do. And so if you've never seen You Can't Take It With You, Frank Capra directed it. It's a great comedy, and that's what I think I like about Capra. He directed comedies, he directed dramas, and all of them, yes, do have a heart to them. But it's an interesting thing that, we now actually have the term Capra-esque.
Yep.
That, if you make something that has a certain level of heart, a certain level of whatever else to it, you can be called Capra-esque. So I think
like Adam Sandler's Mr. Deeds.
I think it was making more about Frank Darabont's The Majestic.
Yeah.
No, no, Chad?
Chris Farley's Almost Heroes.
I thought you were going to say Beverly Hills Ninja.
Ooh.
That's close.
That's got a lot of heart.
That's close. Hey, can I tell you a quick secret? Do you guys know that Nicholas Meyer?
Yeah.
Well, one of his favorite directors is who? Frank Capra. You know what really bothered him later on in life when he found out that Capra was a huge Republican? Because there's a lot of Democrats who really love some of those movies. Keep going. I found that fascinating.
Well, but one thing you got to realize too, and this is what kills me about people who look, and we're getting into politics, but we're going to get into politics briefly. Up until the last 20 or 30 years, Republicans were Democrats.
Yes.
They flipped. So yeah, he can still like Frank Capra. You're okay.
Who, me? Or are you talking about Nicholas Meyer?
Nicholas Meyer.
It's his book, A View from the Bridge, he talked about it.
Look at history.
Yeah. Boy, he doesn't know anything about history. He wrote about time travel.
Oh, that kills me.
Oh,
So what Chad wants you
Anyway.
to know is he always votes Republican. Now keep going, James.
anyway, Capra was nominated for a few Oscars along the lines. The one that's probably most famous out of them is he was nominated for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which again, if you haven't seen Jimmy Stewart also was in It's a Wonderful Life. He's also in You Can't Take It With You. But Mr. Smith Goes to Washington went up for a Best Director and Best Picture in 1939. But some film nobody remembers came along and stole them all.
And we will eventually do 1939 once we get over 1994.
Even though It's a Wonderful Life wasn't necessarily a big hit, he was later nominated for Best Director and Best Picture for that.
No, it really wasn't a hit. That's one of those movies that was found later, like The Wizard of Oz.
But he just had this phenomenal career. And actually, he does have an autobiography, if you're interested in learning more about him, called The Name Above the Title. And it's basically just his history. He talks just about everything from how he came to America up until almost his death. I mean, obviously, he didn't keep writing the autobiography after he died, which is really inconsiderate of him. But he actually didn't die until, I believe, the late 80s. Am I remembering that correctly?
In the 80s, yeah. He would talk.
I'm sorry, 1991.
Yeah,
1991.
He would still talk to film students. I think he talked and lectured quite a bit. He would be interviewed quite a bit. It's actually how come I've seen a little bit more of him. But honestly, I didn't know he was an immigrant. I didn't know that, James.
Yeah, he was, and according to,
by the way, can't throw a rock in Hollywood, especially at that time, without hitting an immigrant. But I did not know Frank Capra was.
Well, and so he also did a lot for other directors, which you talked about. I'm talking to film students. He was president of the Screen Directors Guild from 1939 to 1941, president of the Directors Guild of America from 1960 to 1961. And by the way, critics of his time didn't use the term Capra-esque. They did something far meaner to him. They called his films Capricorns because they were corny and schmaltzy.
Yeah,
was actually what a lot of people said. However, Entertainment Weekly a few years ago did a list of who they felt were the best actors, and even Entertainment Weekly placed him at 9.
You mean the best directors?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
He also was, he served on the jury of the Berlin International Film Festival in 1958.
He had Tea in 1962.
No, I was just pointing out some of the things. He was
and he got it on in 69.
By the way, just real quick,
let's start that.
I want to include one last piece of trivia.
Well, I just don't know, Cap.
Because he was going to direct a certain film with a certain well-known Western actor, but actually had a falling out with that Western actor.
What? He fell out with Clint Eastwood?
No. Was originally supposed to direct and write and direct Circus World in 1964, but quit the project when star John Wayne rejected his script and instead insisted it be written by his friend James Edward Grant. So we almost got a Capra directing Eastwood, dang it, Joe, directing John Wayne and a circus film. Because what could possibly go wrong with having John Wayne in a circus film?
I mean, he was Genghis Khan. That guy, if nothing else, is a thespian.
But yes, yes, Chad, you were absolutely right. Matter of fact, he was, or Joe, your point about him being a Republican, he was a staunch Republican. Matter of fact, he was anti everything that was related to anything that would affect children.
Yep.
So there you go. But yeah, if you've not seen Frank Capra films, besides It's a Wonderful Life, check some of them out. And like I said, You Can't Take It With You was made in the 1930s and still has some laughs in it now, which is pretty hard to pull off.
Oh, and Arsenic and Oak Lakes.
Oh yeah.
God. And it happened one night.
Insanity runs in our family. Hell, it practically gallops.
Yep.
Such a great line.
All right, my turn.
No.
Okay, I'll sit here.
Get on with it.
We've been waiting. Oh, I thought.
All right, so I'm going more modern. I don't have any directors from that era.
Dad, don't watch the black and white.
That's not true. I actually have two that I just left off because again, I thought you guys were going to mention them. But this one by far, especially since Joe said Orson Welles had a big impact, this is the one who had the most impact on me. Growing
Who
up,
directed Garbage Pail Kids the movie?
I don't know.
Can we get
But-
him on?
No,
I'd like
wait.
to talk to him about that 10-minute opening credits.
Somebody look it up. I really think I
on
tried. I
it.
think he's dead. I think I looked him up. But anyway, no,
Well,
Tim
let's
Burton.
dig him up. Who?
Tim Burton.
Never heard of him. He made a
Yeah.
black and white picture. Did you see it?
Yeah, I love all three of them. Two of them. Yeah, two of them. Tim Burton. So yeah, Tim Burton, he had the most profound effect on me as a kid. All of his movies, one after another.
Oh my God!
What?
Sorry, Rod Amato
Yeah.
directed Garbage Pail Kids the movie. I just want to say he's credited. He's also a producer, but I'm now fascinated. I'm sad that he did die in 2003. I'm kind of sad about that because he has some of the most weird credits ever. He did stunt work in a 1950 Humphrey Bogart film in A Lonely Place.
Can we get back to Chad going off?
No,
on
I
Tim?
need to learn more about this guy's stunt work. Did he take a lot of hits to the head doing
Now,
stunt work?
let's talk
Does that
about Tim
explain?
Burton's taste in women.
He did Mighty Joe Young, Joe.
He has a type.
He does have a type.
Same kind of type I have too, but keep going.
Yeah. No. So Tim Burton is just one of those iconic directors, in my opinion, who has kind of gone a little. But anyway, Tim Burton started his career as an animator for Disney. Most people know that. He actually got bored with it. So he struck out on his own. And in 1982, he released the short Vincent, which is an homage to his childhood actor icon, Vincent Price.
Was
because
that
he
not made for Disney?
No, I don't believe so.
And it also, by the way, is it's
Look it up. I could be
It
wrong.
was
I
an
might be wrong.
homage to Vincent Price and Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah,
Could
because he
be
was
solid.
also what his main inspiration was to go into filmmaking was Roger Corman films. He grew up watching what Roger Corman loved, all of the Roger Corman films. In 1984, he released the short Frankenweenie, which would later get remade to a completely different.
Your sound's going up and down a little.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, but I thought I was afraid it was me.
Okay, let me try it now. In 1984, he released Frankenweenie, and Paul Rubens saw this short, which is about a little boy resurrecting his deceased dog. Paul
As
Rubens,
one does.
yes, Paul Rubens was so impressed with this short that he hired him on the spot to direct his feature film, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And of course, that was a major success. He made huge amounts of money. That allowed him to basically pick his project. So he went from Pee-wee's Big Adventure to Beetlejuice, another iconic movie. And then the hits just keep coming. So after Beetlejuice and
Yeah, he did
Pee-wee-
Vincent for Walt Disney. Sorry. Keep
Sorry,
going.
thank you for that. I didn't look that up. I didn't know, but he got a lot of critical. So he did
Most importantly,
Beetlejuice.
by the way, Vincent Price narrates Vincent.
Yeah.
He
Yes.
got the guy to come in and do the narration because Vincent Price was pretty honored that he was the subject of Tim Burton's film.
Yeah,
So,
and-
sorry. I wanted
And
to
you can
clear that
see a lot of that inspiration in a lot of his work. But he after Beetlejuice, he formed his own production company and then made the blockbuster hit Batman. And then, of course, Edward Scissorhands. The list goes on. Most people who are listening to this podcast are aware of Tim Burton and how he made just a slew of amazing films. Now,
He also made Planet of the Apes.
yeah, and that's where we're going to get into. He has made a lot of remakes. That being said, all of those remakes, including Planet of the Apes, for me, I can find something in there that I enjoy.
Yeah,
The only movie that I can say without a doubt is a huge miss for Tim Burton, Dumbo.
I haven't watched it yet. I actually
can't-
don't. I enjoyed some scenes, and I had a hard time with Alice in Wonderland. I found it's just so boring.
I was going to say, because Chad, I was going to do Tim Burton. I figured you would do it. So I
Yeah.
didn't, it was on my list, but I'm glad you did it. But that being said, I think Tim Burton, even in the films that I don't necessarily jive with, so to speak, there is something there. like I read the book before I ever saw the movie of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I do prefer the book to the movie, but the problem with the book, if you read it, is that it ends as a book on a cliffhanger, and you can't do that in a film. Like the ending of that movie is completely different than the
I
book.
completely forgot he completely directed it.
Yep.
So I
you
wanted
just brought it up. Sorry.
So yeah, Miss Peregrine, I love that book series. Ransom Riggs is the author, and if you haven't read them, I think he's up to 4, and then an extra book on top of that, which is the historical stories of the Peculiars. But yeah, no, I mean that movie, for what he had to do to make it work as a studio movie, does it pretty well. I mean, because it's a weird book, and it ends on a cliffhanger where pretty much they're going off to fight Nazis.
And in my opinion, with Tim Burton, he has gotten into, making these big spectacles. Yeah, I agree with Joe. Alice in Wonderland is boring.
I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater.
No, it's
my wife loves it. She'll kill you all.
It's boring, but I will say this: there are parts that are very enjoyable.
It's a pretty movie.
Yeah, it's very pretty to look at. But
it made $1 billion.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you look at all of his work, I honestly think Tim Burton excels more at the films that are not so much reliant on the big spectacle. I mean, my 2 favorite movies of his, Ed Wood and Big Fish, are very low key.
All of his movies, the way he directs them, are I guess a macabre version of Capra-esque, though, right? I mean, they all have heart.
Yes. The only argument I have with what Chad just said is Big Eyes, which is a lower budget film. It's a small film he made for the Weinsteins, and it's almost a damn TV.
Who? I've never heard that name, Joe. Who were those people?
Have you guys seen Big Eyes?
I was going to ask you that, because I'm going on Tim Burton, but that's actually, if there's only one movie of Tim Burton's that I've never seen, and it's Big Eyes.
Big Eyes.
And Big Eyes has a great cast, but to be honest, I haven't seen it. But it's about a husband claiming credit for his wife's art, right? It's based on a true story.
Chris Waltz and Amy Adams.
Amy Adams.
So it's based on a true story about the Big Eye. This lady became famous, and her husband took credit. He was an artist of these big-eyed paintings. It's a small movie, but it's not small, wonderful like Chad, and I'm going to assume mine and Chad's favorite are both the same, right?
Yeah.
Right. So why did I just forget the complete name of Ed Wood? Ed Wood is my favorite Tim Burton film.
As is mine. And then a close second. Honestly, as much as I love Beetlejuice, as much as I love Edward Scissorhands, Batman, Mars Attacks, my second favorite, right behind Ed Wood's Big Fish. It's the only. It's one of the few movies that has actually made me cry.
Movie. Big Fish, though, I think there's more going on there. I think that's a man telling a personal story.
Right.
Well, I was going to say,
when we talked about Mick Garris, and I was talking to him, and it's like, there's something going on there. That's a man telling a personal story.
Right.
But I think Big Eyes is I don't know that either one of you would enjoy it. But maybe you would.
Probably, to me, one of my favorite films, because I think it has the most heart. I mean, just there's something, and it exists in its own weird world.
What is
there's no Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah,
it exists in its own world, but it's got a lot of heart to it.
I get it more now than I did then. That's the same thing with E.T. When I saw it, I actually thought, it's a lot on plot, and it's beautiful, but I get it more now than I did then.
That, and of course, I have a soft spot for Sleepy Hollow because it's just got so much that I love.
James, you nailed it. I was about to say, because my dream, back to this whole directing thing that didn't work out, one of my dreams was to make, I still have envisioned in my head, shot for shot, exactly how I wanted to do my own Sleepy Hollow film. And I remember sitting in the theater watching that movie saying, well, son of a bitch, I'll never get to do that, because actually that's one of the few times where I didn't even get pissed going, nope, this is about as good as you can do, because there's not a lot of plot. And that's Sleepy Hollow, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
And that's one thing you got to give Tim Burton credit for. He has mastered filmmaking in several different genres, claymation, not Nightmare Before Christmas. Nightmare Before Christmas was not Tim Burton. I'm Going the Corpse Bride, of course, and Frankenweenie. And then you have big spectacles like Batman and Beetlejuice and Mars Attacks. And then you have the lesser films like the more storytelling focused, like Ed Wood and Big Fish. He covers it all.
Well, and I want to say real quick to your point, though, and I know we're talking about him as a director, but we can't not mention his work as a producer because he produced probably one of the most important films of 1994,
Cabin Boy.
Cabin Boy. I just wanted to get it out there. We have many short Cabin Boy into most of our recent videos. So I wanted to say Tim Burton produced Cabin Boy, folks.
It's true.
Also
Yeah.
produced Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which is a phenomenal book, but somehow got, even though it was written by the guy that wrote the book, when he adapted it to his own screenplay, he changed a lot of stuff, and I'm still not sure why.
Yeah, and I like the director too. I liked a lot of the directors. I liked Wanted. I liked the Day, whatever it is, Breakers or Walkers, or the other Russian film he made. Anyway, I real quick before, and I know we roll on. Do you think he just got caught up in this is the movie I can get made?
I think so.
Which there's a lot to be said for that. The new
Yeah.
Hollywood, I mean, there's a lot of pictures that Tim Burton. You think, oh, he got to make the phone book. No, he didn't get to make Superman. He wanted to make Superman. Worked on it over a year. I watched an
Yeah,
interview
there's-
with him and Howard Stern. Have you ever saw that, Chad?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's the entire
He
documentary
looks
they did
sad about it.
Yeah, and for years now, granted, as of yesterday, this may still be happening, but for years, Tim Burton has wanted to make an Addams Family movie, and it just keeps
Allegedly.
allegedly, as of yesterday, he's making a live action television. He's producing a live action television show.
Which
Oh,
would
really? I
be-
didn't know
Which
that.
should be what it should. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Adam.
It should be a
Sandler, however I
television
get it.
series. I agree.
But I do want it to be a
I
television.
wonder how come he never got to make it.
It's always he was working on a claymation version of it, and it never happened. And then we got this animated one that's nah.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I
Yeah,
enjoy
bad.
it. I enjoy it for what it is, but it's not. The problem is that Adams Family, and what you have to, if you're a fan of Charles Adams, he didn't have those characters named. I mean, all that stuff was more or less created for the television series.
Yep.
Matter of fact, Cousin It was created for the television series, and then he rushed Cousin It into a sketch, so it would technically appear in his comics before it appeared in the TV series.
Yeah.
Useless trivia.
That's-
But yeah,
no,
anyway,
that's
so yeah,
fascinating.
so Tim Burton, when we talked about favorite directors, he was the one. Like I said, I bounced back and forth with my list. He was the one that stayed
Yeah.
at the
No,
top because I've just every film I have most of his films upstairs, and I can with the exception of some of the more recent ones, I can still pop in and go, damn.
Well, and to your point, because I said he was on my list too, I just want to mention like even some of the things that people didn't immediately think, oh, he would be good at that. Like I was rewatching Sweeney Todd, which is not one that most people go, oh, Sweeney Todd.
No, but I
because-
think I really liked it.
I
Yes,
did
I did
too.
too.
I liked it
and
better than
I-
I did the live action. I saw the play and it was performed very well, but I still prefer the movie.
well, and I think that's it. I think he gets a certain level of grit to the musical
Yeah.
when he did it. So, and even I'll be honest, I picked up. It didn't cost me much, but I picked up Dark Shadows because I grew up.
But Dark
watching-
Shadows has some fun parts. In
I
it.
love.
Well, and
I
that's
enjoy
it.
Dark Shadows.
It
Dark
just it falls
Shadows-
off. It goes off the rails in that third act of them trying to encapsulate 5 years of a soap opera into
and it was a
one
soap
movie.
opera, and he made it more into a comedy.
Yes.
And it works as a comedy, but not if you're expecting the soap opera. I have some people I know are diehard Dark Shadow, old school, Jonathan Fred, Barnabas Collins fans, and they were like,
Your
"No, he's
brother,
not Barnabas."
right?
What now?
Your brother.
Yeah, my brother is a big Dark Shadows as far as I know.
Does
So,
he listen
yeah,
to this
yeah.
show?
I doubt it.
I don't know. Later
Because
on,
I would go off about how much I do not care for that soap opera.
here's the problem.
Have you ever
though.
seen The House of Dark Shadows, Chad?
Mm-mm.
You should
Every-
check it out. It's
Everybody forgets, or everybody thinks Barnabas was there from the beginning. He
He
is
was.
not.
Yeah.
He was added later on. The beginning of that show is almost, I guess the only modern parallel would be kind of X-File-ish, where it's just this lady moving into a creepy mansion, and then later on they added him, and that caught on.
Hey, do we need to move on?
I think we do. I just wanted to throw out some other things about.
Because our episodes have been getting really long. Not
It's
that we
about
have
the
any-
experience, Joe.
Yeah, it is about the experience. Okay. My next one up, I'm having a really hard time picking between the two. And when I say these three, there is not like this was 1, 2, or 3.
Oh, mine's not
No.
ranked either. Yeah.
That's not
No,
right.
mine not either.
So the next one is really easy to guess if you've ever met me. But I'm telling you, I saw the movie when I was 13 years old, 12. I can't remember.
Is this the one that cemented us as friends?
Yeah, it's Sam Raimi.
Yeah, yeah.
So Sam Raimi is a director born in 1959 in Michigan. He went to Michigan State University. I don't think.
And to our listeners, this is the one I did not put on my list because I knew Joe would.
Well, in defense of me, he's one of the few that the other one I'm going to talk about I've met. So that's going to narrow it down real quick. But those are the three that I just couldn't let go of.
Yep.
Sam Raimi, I saw Army of Darkness. I saw a trailer for it. I didn't even know Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 existed. And I made my mother take me to the theater. And I was one of the, by the way, Sam, Bruce, you're welcome. The theatrical run, I saw it. Blew my little bitty mind. And I thought it was just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then I found out that there was actual Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead. And I had to, and this is by the way, some of you out there may be a little young to know, but these movies actually were slightly hard to get a hold of. Now there's 5,000 prints of each one of them. But up until, Chad, what do you want to say? The mid to late 90s? Not so much.
You struggled to find them. I was like Joe. I watched Army of Darkness and was in love with it, and didn't know for a few years that hey, there were sequels.
There were sequels because we were at that age where we wouldn't have seen Evil Dead 2 came out in 87.
And my friend who introduced me to Evil Dead 1 and 2 got them from not any of the video stores local. He had to go into downtown, into a major metropolitan area.
Was it Wild and Woolly?
Wild and Woolly Video to find the copies and bring them and show them to me.
I know. So Bruce Campbell used to talk about this, and if you read some of his books, and he actually uses the word Joe, it's not about me, but he says your buddy Joe over at their house to watch a bootleg copy. That's really accurate. And then I saw Evil Dead 2 and then Evil Dead. I finally found a video store in Hayden that had a copy of it because it wasn't the one we usually go to. My mom finally, once again, God bless my mom. She's other things, but she's done a really good job of letting me be me at a time when I don't know that other parents would have. Does that make sense to you all? And I watched Evil Dead 2, blew my mind. Watched the Evil Dead. I thought these are 3 different movies, and this guy's amazing. And I became obsessed with him. I loved him. Then I probably watched Darkman somewhere right around the same time of Army of Darkness. I didn't see it when it came out in the theater. I knew of it. I'd seen probably a little bit of it. And I was obsessed with him from that point on. I was obsessed reading about him. I found Fango right about 93, 94, and it talked about Sam Raimi. And I just went on. And then the internet kind of happened about 95, 96. I was the first person I knew in my high school. And then it was on to the races there. If you know who Sam Raimi is, then I don't need to talk to you about Spider-Man. He made For the Love of the Game. He made a baseball movie with Kevin Costner that I actually will defend, saying it's just as good as most of the other Kevin Costner baseball movies.
Yeah, and it has one of the most visually stunning elements of any film I've ever seen.
Which one?
When he goes into the zone when he's pitching.
Oh yeah, no, and it works perfectly. I just think that he was unlucky of that came at the end of Kevin Costner baseball movies.
Yeah.
Right.
And also Kelly.
If that came out right after Bull Durham, that would have been a huge hit.
Yeah. I think this was Kevin Costner's last baseball
movie was that. And actually he was not happy over the cut. Apparently there was an R cut, but they were contractually obliged to deliver a PG-13, and Kevin Costner was never happy with the cut with the movie.
Right.
Which I kind of get. Sam has had some misfires. I finally tracked down Crime Wave later on, which is a movie he made between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. That's the reason he went back to do Evil Dead 2, was because they were trying to get a movie off the ground.
Crime Wave.
There's some people out there who don't know that Sam Raimi gave Joel and Ethan Coen their shot. The Coen brothers owe a lot to Sam Raimi. I don't know if they still talk. I don't know if they're still friends, but he gave them their shot. Joel Coen was one of the assistant editors on The Evil Dead. And this guy at 21, 22 made his own little movie in the mountains of Tennessee, and they raised $200,000 or $350,000 to do it. Now, can you imagine the balls?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. And they made another movie to raise the money. So you all know the stories about all that. I want to end with this. As much as I love those movies, those are not Sam Raimi's best movies. I like Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 3 is probably his worst movie. Probably worse than Crime Wave. even Oz the Great and Powerful. Problem with that movie, the reason that wasn't huge is because people were obsessed with Wicked and they thought that's what they were getting.
Right.
And it's not. It's two totally different things. What do you guys
Also,
think about
well, I did
that? And James
Franco and
Miss
what's her
Cass.
face?
Yeah.
The one who ended up playing the Wicked Witch. I thought she was terrible.
I don't hate her as bad as I do. I don't hate James Franco. It's just miscast. When you realize that Robert Downey Jr. was supposed to be in that role, and you're watching that movie, you're like, this shit was written for Robert Downey Jr. He would have been amazing in it.
And
And
I can't
movie
believe
would
I'm
have made
blanking.
another $100 million.
I wish somebody would help me because I'm blanking on the actress name. I actually like her.
Mila
think she's-
Kunis.
Mila Kunis. I think she's talented.
I
I
do
think
too.
she's got a better, but her acting in that movie is a little off the rails, especially when she goes full Wicked Witch. It just
Yeah.
because she's screaming all the time. It's just ugh.
I haven't seen it actually.
But no, I agree with
now.
you that Spider-Man 3 is his worst film.
It's probably his worst film. There's a lot of reasons for that. His best film actually is a movie called Chad,
A Simple Plan.
A Simple Plan. If you've never seen A Simple Plan, it's written by Scott. I can't think of his name. He also wrote that movie about where he also wrote the book and the movie where the vines come and eat people. Was the ruins? What did you call it, James? The Ruins?
Burns.
Burns. Which is
That
also, by
kudzu.
the way, a fun movie if you've never seen that whole horror film.
That kudzu's gonna kill them people.
The kudzu.
A Simple Plan's better.
It is better.
And it has Bridget Fonda.
And we've heard Simple Plan stories from another person that we had on the show earlier. So, A Simple Plan, please, if you've never heard of Sam Raimi, who, by the way, had a ton of cameos in 80s and 90s movies from John Landis and a few others, Mick Garris, they were all friends at the time. Check out A Simple Plan. If you've never only seen the Evil Dead and the Spider-Man movies and that's all you know him, check out A Simple Plan with Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton and Bridget Fonda.
All right, James.
All right, mine is again. It's I guess I'm going old school, but I couldn't not talk about this director because I was actually watching a Muppets Treasure Island with my kids, and they made an allusion to a film this director directed. And then I was watching something else, and they made an allusion to another film this director directed, and I realized that he's directed so much, and he directed in a way that it is referred to, and it has become pop culture that still exists to this day. The Simpsons have made multiple allusions to his works, literally multiple allusions. Family Guy has. I'm talking about Kazan.
Okay. Well, you're not allowed to talk about him because he gave names.
Well, I was
Time
going
out.
to say,
Time
So-
out. Hold on, James, before you go on. I misheard you.
you thought I
And
said Kazam, didn't you?
I really thought you said Kazam.
Ellie, is it
Which
Elliot?
is a movie
Ellie?
that I enjoyed more than I should have.
That is disturbing.
What, Kazam? No,
Was Shaquille O'Neal, Joe,
no,
as a
what's
genie?
the one I liked? Shazam. See, I got it backwards.
Oh
I
my
like
lord!
Shazam. I love that. You just put that on your card, that takes the water right off.
The
Love that
ShamWow.
movie.
ShamWow does that.
I
Joe.
love the Shazam. Wow.
Elia Kazan, birth name Elias Gonzaga Salul. By the way, also an immigrant. He was born in Constantinople.
That was once Istanbul.
Istanbul.
No, it is Istanbul now. It was once
It's
Constantinople.
Constantinople. Yeah, that's what I said.
But it's Istanbul. Once.
He directed 21 actors to Oscar nominations.
Hey.
Yeah.
Do you know who directed Kazam?
No, yes, the same guy that directed V. Ken something.
No, you're wrong. It was Starsky. Paul Michael Glazer.
Really? He directed Kazam?
He directed Kazam.
No, I'm wrong. The same guy that directed I was thinking, what's the other Shaquille O'Neal? Steel? The guy that directed V directed Steel. Look it up.
Still.
Ken something, right?
I
That was
know-
free to watch somewhere. Still was. And Silas made it about
Starsky
20
and Hutch
minutes.
directed Kazam. I did not know that.
Oh, by the
Um,
way, also in Kazam was a actor named Francis Capra. In his bio, it specifically says not related to Frank Capra.
Totally was. Frank Capra disowned him from the grave after Shazam.
So James, go on with your
Or is it
Kazam. Punk.
There's too many Zams. Keep going.
Elliot Kazan was he directed A Streetcar Named Desire, Stella, On the
Yeah,
Waterfront.
but Tennessee Williams gave him everything.
On the Waterfront, I could have been a contender, and East of Eden, which gave us James Dean.
Never heard. Of him. Loved his sausage.
I knew you were going to make that joke, and I still.
I'm talking about his penis.
I still did not protect myself from
his
making
penis.
that joke. No, that's anyway. The other reason I wanted to bring up Kazan is he is not only.
He also directed Boomerang with Eddie Murphy.
You're not talking about Kazan anymore.
Boomerang with Eddie Murphy was directed by the.
It's a different Boomerang. It was the Boomerang he did had Lee J. Cobb in it.
Oh, I was about to say I thought it was. I can't remember the black director's name who directed Boomerang. Keep going.
Anyway.
Lee J. Cobb, Exorcist. Yes.
Anyway, Kazan, as Joe pointed out, is a controversial figure.
Thanks to James. James. Now Nick Nolte's never going to watch our show.
I know. Nick Nolte would not applaud. It was actually kind of divided.
It wasn't just Nick Nolte.
No. I will. Here's the actual kind of commentary about what happened. So,
by the way, did you focus on his career, and then we'll get to that, James?
Okay.
He directed some really good movies. Now let's get to the interesting part.
He won a Best Director for Gentleman's Agreement. And one thing I should say about Kazan was interesting because he would only direct films that he felt had something current to say. So, for instance, mentioning Gentleman's Agreement, it was he considered these issue films. So, Gentleman's Agreement looked at anti-Semitism in America. And so it did receive 8 Oscar nominations and 3 win. He then followed this with Pinky, which was one of the first films that looks at racial prejudice in America. That was 1949 that he directed that. Followed that up with A Streetcar Named Desire. By the way, he also directed it originally on Broadway. So he just took the Broadway adaptation he had done and moved it to film. And that was nominated for 12 Oscars and received 4. And he also did East of Eden. And so that's just some of the films that he did. Looking at this from a couple different ways, just to put this in a perspective, the other reason I chose him was he was an award-winning Broadway director as well. So he won Best Director for Gentleman's Agreement. He won Best Director for On the Waterfront. He was nominated for Streetcar Named Desire and East of Eden. He got a Lifetime Achievement Award, which we'll talk about in a minute, in 1998. But he also won Tony Awards for directing Death of a Salesman, All My Sons, and JB. I don't know JB. He won every Golden Globe Award he was ever nominated for, which would have included Gentleman's Agreement, On the Waterfront, Baby Doll, and America, America. He was nominated for multiple British Academy Awards. He won at Cannes for East of Eden. He won at the Berlin he was nominated at the Berlin Film Festival for Man on a Tightrope and Wild River, and he received later in 1996 an honorary Berlin Film Festival. And at the Venice Film Festival, he won for Panic in the Streets, A Streetcar Named Desire, and On the Waterfront. So he just has a pretty massive career. Mm-hmm. And so we'll get to what makes him controversial. So when he was directing, and he was pretty popular.
Pissed off Nick Nolte.
He was ordered to give testimony as a witness before the House Committees on Un-American Activities, HUAC, in 1952, which was when the Hollywood blacklist was going on. And he got a lot of pushback from liberal friends and colleagues because he did attend meetings in the 1920s with communists.
Which most people did.
Yeah. And by the way,
Chad did.
You have to understand that literally to attend a meeting.
They had food.
And
let me put it another way. Let's look at the case of Oppenheimer, who is a scientist.
Really cool hats. There, I finally got it out.
And look at the case of Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer helped us win World War II.
Yeah.
And they ignored the fact that he hung out with communists in that he attended student meetings where communists were present. After World War II was over, he got reinvestigated, and Oppenheimer ended up having to teach out of country. So it's not just a Hollywood issue. So that's why a lot of people do have issues with Kazan being involved in much of that. So that being said, he did pretty much turn over a couple different people. Originally, but to his credit, he originally tried not to name names. And as they pushed more and more, he gave up the following people. And I may mispronounce some names here. These were the 8 former group theater members he gave up: Clifford Odets, J. Edward Bromberg, Louis Leverett, Morris Konarski, Phoebe Brand, Tony Kraber, Ted Wellman, and Paula Miller, who would later marry Lee Strasberg. And so he also testified, though, that some of them left the party. Odets, he said, had already left the party when Kazan himself left. And he basically tried to argue that so many people had already given up some of these names that he was just, saying, well, you already know about these, so here's the names you already know.
Yeah.
They argue that Kazan ended the career of Art Smith. He also he lost his friendship with playwright Arthur Miller, who would later write The Crucible about, this very same thing. And so the back and forth that happens here is that later on, he is nominated for an honorary Oscar for a lifetime achievement. And he, as he's going for this, as it's announced that he is given it, as Chad has already said, Nick Nolte does not applaud. There's several other people that don't applaud. Let me actually pull up that list because I had it and then I moved something and lost it. So
Any
when
day now, James. Chad,
Well-
if you're listening, not watching, Chad is rolling in the background like he's
Well,
on a roller coaster.
I had this and that ended up lost. So here, Nick Nolte and Ed Harris were the primary people that would not applaud and would not actually even acknowledge it. They stayed in their seats and refused. However, the people that did applaud, and including the people that that presented him, so Scorsese, who later won a Peabody
Scorsese
Award,
and De Niro. But Scorsese later on did a project called Letters to Elliot. And it's basically it's an homage and a tribute to how vital Kazan was to Scorsese's own career. So the people that did applaud include, again, Scorsese, De Niro, Warren Beatty, Meryl Streep, Helen Hunt, Carl Malden, Kurt Russell, Kathy Baker. And so I just want to say, again, this is one of the cases where a lot of people still argue. And when there was some pushback about, he named names, actually one of the reasons they went ahead and gave it to him was that enough people in the Academy said, we have to separate the art from the artist. We are giving an award for directing, not for politics. And we cannot deny that he was a phenomenal director who gave us many of the most important scenes in cinema of his time. And so that's why I had to go with Kazan, because everything alludes at some point. I mean, the screaming of Stella, the I Could Have Been a Contender, all of that stuff, that was Kazan bringing out some of his best things. And if you really want some interesting commentary, read some of his work, because he also did an autobiography. Read his commentary about how Brando and Dean were so different, and about how he always viewed Dean as being really close to fracturing. Like he was uneven and unsteady, and he used that in the film. So there you go. Kazan, if you haven't seen any of his films, go watch them.
Okay. So my second pick, probably out of the ones we've discussed, this is probably going to be the most obscure one, which is kind of sad that I would have to put him in this ranking.
Who did direct Shakiest Gun in the West?
I don't know.
But
it wasn't this gentleman, Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Oh, Jeunet.
One of my favorite directors of all time.
Jeunet.
And you can't, and to our listeners, if you haven't heard of Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the list of movies that we're getting ready to talk about, at least check out one of them. I will give my recommendations as to which one you should, but his work.
Alien Resurrection. Keep going. I'm sorry.
His work needs to be more appreciated for what it is, in my opinion. So Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the interesting thing about Jean-Pierre Jeunet is that he is completely self-taught. He taught himself how to be a filmmaker, which I think is amazing. He started out doing commercials, and then from commercials he went into shorts, and this is all in France. We won't hold that against him.
So I was going to talk about him going in someone's shorts, and then I was like, nah, Chad's being serious. And the next damn thing out of your mouth is, we won't hold his frogginess against him. Keep going.
No, France has a lot of great things. They stole my Louvre map.
You were saying.
That's a story for another day.
That's a story.
I'm sorry, I can't do pauses and talk about my personal life. Where am I at? Oh, yeah. So when he was doing the film shorts, this is where he actually met one of his longtime collaborators and friend, Mark Caro, who was a designer and artist. And Mark Caro also deserves a lot of credit for some of Jeunet's earlier work. So they got together and they started working on more animated features, live action, again, all in France. And then they broke out with Delicatessen. That was their first venture into feature film. And what an entrance into feature film is Delicatessen. Guys, I think we all agree Delicatessen is an amazing film.
Mm-hmm.
James?
Yeah. I mean, do you need my approval? Yes,
it's a lot of fun. It's very inventive. The next one you're going to talk about is
Oh, yeah. I'll get to there. But the interesting thing about this one is I looked it up because they both co-directed this, Delicatessen and his other films that we're getting ready to mention. Jeunet actually focused mostly on the actors, where Caro was more into the visual elements. And there is some great visual elements in Delicatessen. There's a whole musical scene that is all based around just sounds that are going on in this apartment. And if you haven't seen Delicatessen, real quickly, it's about people living in a hotel during the apocalypse, and it's their struggle for food. But after this, they then decided to again take what popularity they got from Delicatessen and work on a film that they had been trying for 10 years to make. And that is the one Joe is mentioning, and it is one of my favorite films, again, of all time. I don't like to make a list, but if I had to make a list, this would be on it. The City of Lost Children. I didn't realize it took 4 years for them to make this film.
I didn't either. Actually, I'm sitting here thinking I know someone who loved it so much they named their daughter Miette.
Oh, wow.
Which is a funny story because she was telling me a story about Miette taking soccer practice and the coach going, "Get out there, meat!" because they ended up in Kentucky.
Yes.
With a daughter named Miette.
So again, it's the City of Lost Children kind of takes place in an apocalyptic world. And it's all about this man who lives on an island who is trying to dream again, and he can't. And he's aged rapidly because he can't dream, and he's stealing the dreams from children to try to bring that back to himself.
And it stars one of the greatest actors of all time,
Ron Perlman, as one.
By the way, you're talking about one Frenchman. Ron Perlman worked with another Frenchman quite a bit.
Now Del Toro's Mexican.
Jean-Jacques Annaud, right?
You know what?
And so he's the one that made Quest for Fire, The Name of the Rose, all of these star.
I didn't know his name. Sorry.
And the reason I bring that up is if you get the opportunity to listen to Ron Perlman's book, Easy Street the Hard Way, he talks about both these directors who evidently know one another and talks about how extremely different they are. And just real quick, his story of getting cast in Quest for Fire, where he talks about showing up to audition and having to audition against people like Danny DeVito.
Is this payback for me talking about Kazam?
Yeah.
Okay,
Danny DeVito for the role. Can you imagine?
I don't know if he was making a joke about Kazan and just wanted to say Kazam.
If
There's too many N's and M's here.
I want you to watch Quest for Fire and think that we could have had Danny DeVito in that role.
I mean, Ron Perlman.
But I just wanted to
was
bring that because
born
you're
to
talking about.
play a caveman. I'm not trying to be mean, but he was born to play the role.
But no, I was just going to point that out though, that there's a lot of French films that both these so he worked for 2 French directors. So when you brought up Ron Perlman,
Well, you would think there's only one French director.
oh my god,
Dad.
You know,
Go
so
ahead,
Jean-Pierre Jeunet, so City of Lost Children, again, great critical success. You know, granted here, again, this is one of those instances of where Joe talked about Evil Dead and you having to go to some bargain bin. Here you had a hard time finding Delicatessen in
Oh
City
my
of Lost
God,
Children.
dollar contestant. The dollar store was a hell of a lot harder to find. I'm telling you, I don't know how I found them.
Yeah, I don't know how I found them I found them at some artistic video store that had, you know, rare movies. And,
All
you know,
I
for
had was the
example,
autistic one.
you know, in the 20s, like now now you can get City of Lost Children and Delicatessen streaming on Netflix and Amazon Prime. I can't remember which one it is.
Oh, I didn't know they were streaming.
But yeah, they're streaming. And City of Lost Children now is on Amazon Prime. But back in my 20s, when I wanted to own this movie, because it was one of my favorite movies, the only place I could find it was a bookstore, and they wanted $50 for it.
I was gonna say
That
the
sounds
way
about right.
I got to see City of Lost Children is this may shock you, as I know I come across as a jock, but in high school I was on the academic team, and
That's also shocking.
yeah, I know, shocking. And it was ran by our French teacher, and I never took France or French.
Holy
Thank
shit,
God.
James.
But she actually said, "Oh, you like movies? You should watch this." And she actually gave me
You
a
like
copy
movies?
to watch.
You
So
kids
there you
like
go.
music?
So after
You like the rock and roll?
You like
after this, Jean-Pierre decided to go more American, and that's when we got Alien Resurrection. Now, out of his entire film career, Alien Resurrection again is that dark horse. But again, guys, you all got to admit there's elements of
No. I defend him. That movie, the problem with that movie, I actually think is Joss Whedon's script.
Yeah, I'm not bad. I'm just saying out of his entire.
Oh, snap. No, and I would have said it before Joss Whedon had sex with all those women, which
I'm
I
just
still
saying
don't
out of
understand
his-
why he got Me Too for it. But
But
go
I'm
ahead.
just saying out of his entire filmography.
Oh, probably. No, I'm
But and
defending
I still
you.
like it. I still like it.
No, the problem with that movie is Joss Whedon's script.
Yeah. So
It's a different. Do you know, by the way, who was originally who they wanted to direct Alien Resurrection, and he
No.
backed out? Danny Boyle.
oh wow, no, I didn't know that.
His follow up to Train Spotting.
Wow, did not know that. But no, so Jean-Pierre Jeunet, he directed Alien Resurrection, and this time Caro came along as a consultant. He didn't really have the same, you know, work in that he did with City of Lost Children and Delicatessen. But after Alien Resurrection came and went, Jean-Pierre Jeunet then finally broke out on his own. And I want to point out, you know, a lot of directors will make a movie every 2-3 years. Jean-Pierre Jeunet is making a movie every 4 or 5 years, because it takes him that long to get a film made. But after that, he went on to do Amelie, the amazing Amelie.
Don't you think that's what he's most known for?
And I believe he won the Oscar for Amelie, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember, but don't you think that's his most famous film?
I think that is his most famous film.
Yeah,
by
I think
far
that's
none.
the one. Yeah, and it's a beautiful love story.
It is a beautiful love story and a beautiful film.
Mhm.
And then that was followed up with A Very Long Engagement. Again, another great film that people just don't talk about. And then you got Micmac, which is a great comedy. Love that movie. And then his last movie, which again, out of all Jean-Pierre Jeunet films, I didn't know what, this one kind of slid by me. You can see this on Amazon Prime. I highly recommend checking it out. The Young and Prodigious T.S. Spivet.
Oh, that's a hell of a title. I'll check
Oh,
it
it's
out. I didn't even know he had a movie out.
Yeah, no, this one's fairly old. Again, it was 5 years ago.
Okay.
He's just now working on his next film, which I believe is called Big Bug, which I believe is a direct to Netflix film.
Okay.
And it's about androids taking over the world and
Yeah.
people trapped in a house while the androids are taking over the world. So it's Jean-Pierre Jeunet. If you haven't seen any of his films, people, especially to our listeners here, get on our streaming services, look up Delicatessen, look up City of Lost Children, look up T.S. Spivet. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I think a lot of them probably have seen Amelie, and if they've seen Amelie, you will like City of Lost Children.
Yeah.
Well,
So
You should watch it.
And if and again, one of those directors who had an impact on me just from his visual style is Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Yeah.
Joe, what do you got?
Okay, so my last one is not technically from Kentucky, like a lot of people. He is and he isn't. He's basically born in Carthage. Basically, he was born in Carthage, New York, and then his dad was a music professor, and then moved him down here to a little town in Bowling Green in the late 40s, early 50s, to teach music, and that's where he grew up.
I don't know if I ever told you this. My television teacher in high school hung out with him.
I don't know if I ever told you this. The guy who I couldn't stand, who run some sort of program to help, I don't know,
Kids that don't read good but want
community college, didn't like him because he said he was famous and uppity and rode around his Cadillac and got all the girls and would bitch about him from time to time.
And that, of course, is Joe.
John Carpenter.
Again, another one that was at the top of my list, but I knew Joe would bring him up. So
well,
again, Joe and I pretty much dislike each other on a daily basis, but we agree on some things.
Well, we also agree on
Ed Wood.
Just give me a second.
Pie, you fat fuck.
I always tell people the only thing that all three of us agree about is Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
But that being said, John Carpenter, to kind of encapsulate what this man has meant to me, and whom I've actually met a couple of times, and who was very nice to me, which I didn't get to interview him. That was before all this happened. I think we get caught up with Halloween, and we do. Go ahead.
Real quick. James, favorite John Carpenter film, or John Carpenter film that you got introduced to first? What was it?
Oh, first film. Oh man.
Rapid fire. Go.
Probably in the Mouth of Madness.
That's
really?
The first one?
That's the first
late.
one?
You're in the 90s, man.
Man.
Well, I was about to say, you got to remember, I didn't like horror films.
Yeah, but there's Big Trouble in Little China.
Which was my.
I guess it probably was Big Trouble in Little China, but I think my problem with Big Trouble in Little China was I watched the Fox heavily edited noon showings.
Oh no!
Even if it does, it still holds up. What's yours, Chad?
It would be
Big Trouble in Little China.
Trouble.
Okay,
yeah, Big Trouble.
And then that led to the thing that led to Escape. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't see the thing till later, and then it just blew my mind.
Yep.
So, a little bit about John. He went to Western, and then he was in a rock and roll band, and then he left there to go to USC. Actually, technically, never graduated from USC. I don't know either one of you know that. He actually never finished his degree. He hung out and
college dropouts never amount to anything.
Never amount to a damn thing. Nobody knows who this man is now that we're talking about. So he wanted to be a director. Do you guys know what he wanted to make? What he went to Hollywood to do? Make Westerns. Oh. He never technically ever made a Western. Well, Vampires is a Western, but yeah.
I was going to say, Escape from New York, if you look at it, crooked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Assault on Precinct 13 is Rio Bravo.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's Rio Bravo. And by the way, his favorite director, Howard Hawks, because he says Howard Hawks made a good movie that you didn't know was Howard Hawks's in every genre. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do. To not bring attention to yourself, make a good movie, and do it in every genre. He says Howard Hawks was the man. So, that being said, he made his living doing what, gentlemen? For a long time, he was successful at it as a screenwriter. That's actually how he wrote his way into movies, how he got his way into movies was being a screenwriter. And he talks about you would get, let's say you got a job to do 8 weeks, what he would do, because he was lazy and liked to party, was that he would do a really good, detailed, like 20-page outline the first 2 days, party on the money, and then come back the last 2 days you had to do, and then write the screenplay. But you had to have that really good, detailed outline. Some of those movies went on to, I think one of them was Bad Moon Rising. A lot of people haven't seen with Tommy Lee Jones. Eyes of Laura Mars was originally a script he wrote called Eyes. That's how he got into filmmaking. So he finally got to make Assault on Precinct 13, which is a smaller film. I like it. I like the music in it. What do people remember about Carpenter films? The music. And I find it fascinating after all this time. What?
Go ahead.
People love Carpenter's music. It's fascinating that he's.
You think out of everything in Carpenter's films, that's what it's remembered for?
I think it's hard not to think of Halloween without thinking of the music.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, he's talented at many other things.
Oh,
I'm saying the
it
music
may help Chad
best.
if we did this. Here, let me help Chad. Dun, 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 dun.
I know the soundtracks, James.
Hold on. Dun 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 dun. Dun. Anyway, I find it fascinating that 50 years later, he's got a second career as a musician, going on the road with his son, playing out the sold out events. Y'all find that interesting?
I think what was what was the interviewer where they said they asked him, do you want to make another film? He goes, fuck no, all I care about is playing Xbox and playing my music.
Playing his music, loves talking about music, likes hanging out.
I believe
with
he
his
also
son,
sir,
obviously.
mentioned smoking somewhere in that.
That's right,
conversation as well.
James. Sorry, I forgot.
Will he make it? So I could sit here. So a few years ago, this is the other thing I wanted to talk about because I think a lot of people already know about Carpenter. Del Toro, about 2 years ago, does either one of you remember this? Went on a Twitter rant for like 2 days on John Carpenter about how great John Carpenter is and no one gives the man fucking credit.
Well,
And then he just started going down his filmography, and it wouldn't have made any difference to anyone if it hadn't have been who done it, Del Toro. And people took note of, do we forget that this man gave us Big Trouble in Little China? Do we forget that he gave us The Fog? Did we forget that he gave Halloween and just started going down? And honestly, his last great film probably is In the Mouth of Madness. I was rewatching Vampires the other day. That's his last fun movie. Although I enjoy scenes in Ghost of Mars. It makes no damn sense, but I enjoy scenes in it. It's still a little fun. I would love for him to make another movie. I don't know that he wants to make another movie. I think he's a very comfortable man who's made probably a good living, who's now more than multiple times has talked about getting a free check for doing nothing from remakes and enjoying just reaching his hand down and people putting money in it. And I think he said it too much that people don't take him. Every time they start to take him seriously, I think he runs his mouth.
Which gets to the
producer who he almost married, who he didn't, who he left for Adrienne Barbeau, who produced Halloween, Deborah Hill, talked about Carpenter could have been as big as Spielberg if he could have learned to work with people.
And he has the famous quote: in France, I'm an auteur. In Germany, a filmmaker. In Britain, a genre film director. And in the USA, a bum.
That's right. But out of all his crappy movies, and I'm joking about crappy movies, which ones suck? There's only a couple.
Ghost of Mars.
I don't actually put a Ghost of Mars on that. Because
and Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Memoirs of Invisible Man and the Village of the Damned are the only two that I put on the list.
Oh yeah, I don't know, man. Ghost of Mars. Sorry, Joe, I disagree. Ghost of Mars is pretty damn unwatchable.
I don't think it's unwatchable. In fact,
But yes, Village. I forgot.
I really like the music for Ghost of Mars.
I forgot Village of the Damned. That is a made-for-TV movie. You talk about big eyes. Yeah, Village of the Damned is definitely a made-for-TV movie.
Made-for-TV movie. It feels like a television movie. He made it. He says the reason he made it was that he did the deal with Universal. He's one of many who was coerced or wanted to make a remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon that it didn't.
But that is his passion project, if I'm not mistaken, right, Joe?
There's several. The only other project, and I learned about it from him, is one of the books that I would love to do. Shit, I completely forgot about the Star Is My Destination.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a fantastic book. So John Carpenter meant a lot to me. Turned out he wasn't an asshole to me. And I would love to interview him someday, but I want to talk to him about stuff that nobody would probably be interested in hearing. I don't have any questions about Halloween.
Yeah, I don't. Honestly, out of everything he's done, Halloween's just not the one I would care to ask about. I would like to get a Memoirs of Invisible Man story going. What the hell happened?
I would like. Well,
Sam Neill, and Chevy Chase.
Well, obviously he got along with Sam Neill. And he said wonderful things about Sam Neill. He said
probably nothing about Chevy Chase.
Russell. He said Sam Neill's like Kurt Russell. He's the kind of actor you want to work with. He knows his lines. He shows up. He hits his marks. He does everything that you want him to do. I don't remember him telling a good Chevy Chase story.
Most people don't have one.
No, not a positive one. Or they have a good Chevy Chase story. They just don't have a positive Chevy Chase story.
Yeah, exactly.
I still think it's hilarious that poor Harold Ramis is now passed on. But He threw a suitcase at Harold Ramis during the making of Vacation.
Hey.
All right, James.
I literally, by the way, have been sitting here tossing up about 6 or 7 different names, and then it dawned on me which one I have to go with. Because most people are going to argue he's more of a producer, and you would be right. But I cannot let this go without mentioning the director that is Roger Corman.
I knew you were going. I thought that's who you were going to do beforehand.
Yeah, James, I thought that would have been your 1st one.
I'll be honest, guys, it didn't even occur to me till about 30 minutes into this mess to even think about Corman.
I
But
have no idea why. Because
Really?
Matt, you going to tell the story?
Yeah. I have a signed Corman thingy.
Is it the Raven behind you?
Yes.
There you go, James. You're welcome.
It's not that one because Chad gave me that one. He signed. It's a Laserdisc. I have a signed Laserdisc by Corman. It's not that because Chad gave me that one.
You're welcome.
But Corman is more of a producer. He didn't direct that much, and some of what he directed.
Well, he directed quite a bit, James.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
He just produced more.
Not near as much as he produced.
Well, no, because the man's more machine now.
He directed 56 films. He produced, I don't know, 4,000. Let me see.
He only directed 56. Chad, that only 56.
He
And the
produced.
last one was Frankenstein Unbound. I mean,
I think Jean-Pierre. I think when I picked Jean-Pierre Jeunet has done like 7.
He produced.
I don't even know what filmmaking's about yet, Chad. I think it's about 40.
He has produced 414 films. He's more known as a producer than a director. And some of what he directs sucks. I mean,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You ever see Gunslinger?
No.
Gunslinger was made fun of on Mystery Science Theater 3000. It is a Western where a woman's husband is shot down, and her name is Rose Hood, has to become the sheriff until a new one arrives. And she falls in love with the guy that she is sent to kill her.
Hold on, I got to do it. She's the sheriff?
She was too. Anyway.
Keep going.
But Corman.
Lobo, Sheriff Lobo.
Sorry, you killed me. Probably the reason I'm going to go with Corman, though, as far as what you all were talking about having an impact on me, I loved when I first got into horror movies, probably because of my mother, she loved the Corman Poe adaptations. So I remember, the first horror movie that
a lot of his films were low budget. Thank you. Thank you.
Poe. And several of these were done with Vincent Price. Not all of the Poe ones are Vincent Price, but the good ones are. We got The Raven. We got
all right,
Haunted
quick.
Palace.
Top of your head, both of you. Best Poe Price movie. Go.
Mask of the Red Death.
Mask, yeah.
I'm going back and forth between that and House of Usher, but I did this for Scarefest, and I think it's Mask.
See, my second would probably, and I like Usher, but I love Pit and the Pendulum.
That was my second one.
By the way, do you know who wrote A Mask of the Red Death? Charles Beaumont, with Richard Matheson, who wrote Follow House of Usher, and Rod Serling wrote all the great Twilight Zone.
But we also, the other ones, The Tomb of Ligeia. And by the way, real quick, another Vincent Price one he did was Tower of London, and useless trivia on that. That was a remake, but Vincent Price is in both versions. He plays the main character, whereas Karloff played the main character.
The Tomb of what, James?
Ligeia?
No, Gia tells all truth.
You turned on your microphone for that. James, go.
Yep.
He also did give us, of course, Little Shop of Horror and Bucket of Blood. So you got to give him some credit. He's known as the King of the Bees, and he turned out most of these films stupidly quick. So I had to bring up Roger Corman as the director because he is probably somebody that had a huge impact on me. I always loved Edgar Allan Poe and his film versions of Poe, even though they often veer from the original source material.
Well, they're
a lot of fun.
I mean, we're talking about a 10, 14-page story. It's hard to...
Or sometimes a poem that's a page and a half long.
Like The Raven, which is a fun movie.
Well, it's fun because of everybody that's in it. It's too bad that that young man in it never went on to do any film.
No. What was his
That-
name? Little Jackie Wilson. Nicholson.
Yeah, Jack.
Jackie Nichols. Oh, Jack Nick.
You would think that somebody would have took a shining to him and gave him a chance.
Ah!
See how
No,
he did that?
no. He missed out on all those two Jakes. I was trying to think of something obscure.
That's Chinatown. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what do you
Um,
expect? It's Chinatown.
X, by the way, another fun one that stars people, I should say, but most people have forgotten is actually X, the Man with X-Ray Eyes, which is
That's a good one.
it's a pretty good film once you go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I agree. And by the way, Buckets of Blood is a good one too.
Yeah.
And probably a little bit of a history lesson for some people about beatniks and what that was. But yeah. All right. Jad, you're in.
Oh, and The Trip. We should mention The Trip.
Yeah. The Trip. And Wild Angels. And we could keep going. Chad.
Guys, okay, I'm struggling with my third one. You all struggled with your first ones. I'm struggling with my third one.
You struggle with your addiction.
Yeah. And normally I
This
have
is
my
just
list.
addiction. He doesn't
have-
enunciate well. Sorry.
I have my list pretty much laid out. I'm the only one. I usually have, these are the only ones I'm going to talk about. But I'm struggling between three. But I'm going to go with the one who, when I was in high school, just like Joe, I wanted to be a director and a writer. That was all I wanted to be. Even growing up, that's all I ever wanted to be. And I always tried to figure out, the types of movies that I would be interested in making. And then I was introduced to this writer director in high school, and it clicked that is the type of movies that I wish I could make. I'm talking about Kevin Smith. I think this one was kind of on the nose for you guys. You all know that he's
Well,
one
I
of my
think
favorite.
most of ours have been on the nose, but
Yeah.
I completely get it. That's
Yeah,
that's a dude.
Kevin Smith. When I saw Clerks for the first time, I was like, he made such a interesting film with so little. If you don't know about the making of it, he literally maxed out his credit cards. He didn't think this movie was going to do anything. He just threw a bunch of credit cards at making this movie. Didn't know how he was going to pay it back.
No, I was like, I can spend 20-some thousand on tuition, or I could do it on a movie.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he made the movie, and
And it blew up. It never worked out for him. He now wishes he would have went to college.
Yeah. So he then he followed that up with Mallrats, which it's his ode to John Hughes. A lot of people don't think of it like that, but it's his ode to John Hughes, the 80s films that inspired him to be a filmmaker. And then of course then Chasing Amy came out, and I thought rom-coms may be my least favorite genre of films.
Not musicals?
Man, rom-coms are right down there at the bottom. It's a toss-up between musicals and rom-coms.
He
You never seen
demands-
Failure to Launch?
He demands that you either go rom or com, and he believes it's an unholy union.
Okay,
Yeah,
real quick. Let's do this one more time. I've kind of had it fun. Worst rom-com of all time. Go. Me, Serendipity.
Oh, the Lake House.
I never saw it.
Oh, it's
Oh
terrible.
man, I don't know.
Worst one,
This-
James, off the top of your head. Serendipity. Do it.
Oh, see, I've never seen. What's the one about the lawyers?
There's a bunch of rom-coms
George
about
Clooney.
lawyers.
George Clooney lawyer movie.
One Fine
Indelible
Day?
Cruelty? That's the one directed by the Coen brothers.
No,
One Fine
I'm
Day?
getting it. No, it's not George Clooney. I'm getting it confused.
Now, One
Oh,
Fine Day is
crap.
not that bad.
No, it's not. That's actually
Oh,
entertaining.
crap.
Yeah.
What is it?
Anyway,
actually,
He's missing the point of rapid fire.
I
Glenn
you know what?
does
I
this
don't
better
watch a
than
lot
the
of rom
Boneheads.
coms. I don't watch a lot of rom
No,
coms.
but you could have told me your worst one. Everybody's got one that's like,
I block them out if I can.
Lake House is unfucking watchable. But anyway,
Is that the magic mailbox?
yes.
I wanted that magic mailbox to meet the magic mailbox from Butterfly Effects and do a crossover.
There's another one too that I had to see on a date once, but Jesus, I can't remember the name.
I'm trying to remember the one with dog. Is it Walk with Dogs? With John Cusack and
Serendipity.
no,
Hey,
there's
are you
another
talking
one.
about cats and dogs?
No, it's
No, that was not bad.
No,
I'm
I
gonna
was
have
gonna
to,
say.
I'm gonna have to look it up. James, look. You can look it up while I'm talking. I think it's called Walk with Dogs. I think it has Diane Lane and John Cusack in it. I could be wrong, but anyway, no. Kevin Smith. So he followed that up with Chasing Amy, and that is quintessential rom com for me. I think it's a perfect film in terms of its storytelling, It's inside jokes, everything about it. And then my favorite Kevin Smith film came after that, Dogma, which I feel
Must
like
love dogs.
Must Love Dogs.
Must
Thank
love
you.
dogs.
Movie's fucking unwatchable.
I don't even remember it.
But no,
Because you hate dogs.
and I want to say,
love
as
eating
soon
them.
as soon as I said Must Love Dogs is fucking unwatchable, my little puppy just walked into the other room.
Well, yeah. Because
So
you
anyway.
are now not a nice person. Keep going.
So Dogma is a great film that kind of at the time it got a lot of backlash because of the fact that from the Catholic religion, because of its views on that it told on religion. And one of the funniest parts about that is there was a protest going on, and Kevin Smith actually attended the protest as a protester and got interviewed for local television and talked about how awful this movie was. He just didn't give a shit. But is he the best director, filmmaker of all time?
Oh, God.
No.
But I don't know that other than Wells, who on our list, Capra, Tim Burton a little. I don't think that we named people that reinvented cinema, except for a couple.
Jean-Pierre Jeunet a little bit, but and Sam Raimi a little bit. Anyway, but Kevin Smith, he has his way of storytelling is fascinating to me. It's how I wish I could write if I was making movies. I just wish I could capture some of his essence in how he tells stories. Now, granted, some of those stories are not, especially in recent years, Yoga Hosers is unwatchable, people. You're talking about one of the biggest Kevin Smith fans there are. Yoga Hosers is unwatchable. Jay and Silent Bob reboot, man, there's not a lot there.
It's not a lot there. No, it got a lot of people talking nice things about it, and then I watched it and I was like, oh. No. But Yoga Hosers, I agree with Chad, is damn near unwatchable. Whereas I defended Tusk and Red State.
And I will defend Tusk and Red State as well. When I saw Red State at first, I did not care for it. I was actually upset because I was like, I actually will defend Jersey Girl as well.
Yeah, Jersey Girl's not bad. And it has a great performance by George Carlin.
It really does.
And nobody's bad in that movie.
Nobody's bad in that movie. It gets kind of shit on. And Joe won't agree with me. I will actually defend Cop Out in some parts, not all of it.
It's just so damn long, Chad, and boring.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie, there's no reason for it to be 2 hours long.
Yeah, that movie could have been trimmed. But there are parts in it that are funny.
Yes, anything with Sean William Scott.
Yeah. Tracy Morgan does not need to have
a smidge and everything with Sean William Scott.
Yeah, Tracy Morgan does not need as much screen time as he got.
Well, when you're working with Bruce Willis under those conditions.
Yeah. But Yoga Hosers is probably the only film where I cannot defend him. I still defend Tusk. People shit on Tusk way too much, in my opinion. There's something there that people just don't appreciate.
I completely agree with you.
So Kevin Smith, again, he's one of those ones that made me want to get into film. He's what made me try to stick with it for as long as I tried to. I struggled with my last pick, but it always has to be Kevin Smith.
That's good. Boys, instead of doing honorable mentions, I don't know how James feels about this. Could we do a part 2 of this later?
Yeah, because I was saying I do have some honorable mentions if we're going to do it, but if not, and what I would say is, should we maybe go into the next one with an idea of genre? Like, who is your favorite? If I give you a genre, can you name a director in it? Could we do something like that?
Sure.
Because I've got one, and I was like, oh, he's a really great director that I don't think many people talk about anymore. But God,
as long as it's not who we talked about, that sounds great.
Yeah, because I've seen the one that popped in my head. I've seen most of his movies, and it's because my dad loved his movies, and my dad never picked anything by director.
I say James throws out the genre, and then we all three give answers without knowing what James is going to throw out, and you do 3 different genres, and we each give a director for each genre.
All right.
Sound good, Chad?
Sure.
No?
Sure.
It's different.
Yeah, we'll do that next week.
It's
What could
better than this
possibly go
bored ass
wrong?
shit. Remember? I don't know. It's different. I like it.
Yeah.
Maybe Chad will get to talk about the director of Serendipity. I don't know why that one stuck in my head. I don't even think it's the one I saw in the theater. But God,
You went on a date on Serendipity, I thought.
is it Serendipity? I don't remember. It's awful. It's
Oh no, what's the oh, we're getting a little too personal. What was the time traveling one with Hugh Jackman?
oh, that's it.
Oh,
Oh.
Kate Leopold. That
Kate
may
and
be
Leopold,
mine. I
that's
saw
right.
that in the theater too.
Ooh, that's awful. That was a good night handshake.
Yep.
Which I didn't mind the good night handshake. It's just she, almost hit me with the damned gate, making sure, and I didn't do anything. I would admit it if I'd done something and said something horrible. You all know me. I'd have been like, I apologize to the lady who cut my hair 6 months ago for 20 years ago. I was like, whatever I said, I'm sorry.
Oh, that was great. So the director of Serendipity, real quick, we have to talk about Peter Chesham.
What?
He also, right before that, he directed Town and Country,
Ooh.
and that was before that, The Mighty. But after Serendipity, Shall We Dance, Hannah Montana the movie,
Saw that.
and then of course, honestly, his only enjoyable film, in my opinion, is Hector and the Search for Happiness with Simon Pegg.
Missed it.
Sorry. Well, Town and Country's okay, I guess.
Is that the one with Warren Beatty?
I think so.
Isn't that the huge, bomb with Warren Beatty?
I think so. I need to look more into it, which
Yeah,
is
okay.
not time for our podcast.
All right. So thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll hopefully have some more director stuff coming your way. Anything else for the good of the group?
Swept Away also sucks as a romantic comedy there.
But do you think Guy Ritchie and Madonna were just hanging out?
I
Beach.
mean,
That turned around Guy Ritchie. I know that started making all of his films go. Ugh.
Guy Ritchie.
he's rebounded, I think, pretty nicely.
Has he?
I liked the last one really well.
You didn't like The Gentleman?
I liked
I haven't
it.
seen
I
it.
said I liked it. It's good. You
Well, I was
should
talking
watch
to
it,
Chad. I wasn't just, yeah. How
No,
can
no,
you?
it's fun. Did you watch
Yeah.
it, James?
Yeah, I finally caught it.
Yeah, it's fun.
I wanted to see it in theaters, but then everything went sideways because life sucked.
Yeah, I know the feeling. All right, guys. Thank you all so much. Please subscribe and have some of your friends subscribe because it makes me feel special.
Or set up fake accounts based on dead people, as one of our friends said to do, and have those dead people subscribe.
Sounds good to me. This is
Pull
Bonehead.
out the Ouija board, kids.